Hello there and welcome. In this video I will guide you in 7 easy steps through everything you need to know to get started with Age of Wonders 4. In this beginner's guide we're going to get covered over the mechanical things that you need to know to enjoy the game. There's a lot to digest at first, and I did my best to put things into a meaningful chronological order, and I hope that by the end of this video we'll just fire up your next game and explore the many things that you can do with this one. So let's get started with number 1, the game start. I honestly gotta say, when you're completely new, I highly recommend going for a quick start, because honestly, the exact configurations of the world are not really that interesting when you don't know what you're doing, and quick start even gives you a low difficulty level to get started with. But since I want to do the things a little bit more detailed here in this video, we're gonna get started together in a more selective way. So we're gonna go here. You can either go for a unknown realm and do a randomly rolled one. These can be quite rough, especially when you're new around the block. I personally recommend Idella as the easiest standard challenge realm that you can play. It's a randomly rolled peaceful world that offers enough challenge to have fun with, but isn't harsh in a way that the enemy will start overrolling you, or there's too many environmental dangers that make the game hard to digest. We select that, and in these configurations I recommend a large map because it does give you more time, but if you like a little bit more pressure, go for a medium-sized. Don't go smaller than that, because the enemy will start attacking you earlier the smaller the world is, basically. And when it comes down to the difficulty, don't shy away from easy difficulty from the beginning, even if you are a veteran at games like these. There's just so many things to pick up, and I found it to be extremely helpful to just have leeway to do something wrong because you misread a mechanic or you haven't noticed how things work, but your mileage may vary. We're going to keep it exactly like that, and when it comes down to which faction you play, highly recommend here. Also, creating a faction is something that I wouldn't recommend to a beginner. Instead, choose something from the beginner's library. I am going to use, for the sake of this tutorial, Sundren of the House Eniac. She's from the High Culture, which I deem as one of the most interesting to pick up at the beginning of the game. They are balanced, powerful, easy to understand. I really like them. Even as somebody who has already, I don't know, several hundred hours in the game, they are fun to play still, and the starting selections on this character are pretty good to understand. It is a ranged-centric build, which is most of the time quite easy to pick up, and this is going to be what we're using for this template. But you by yourself, when you're getting started, don't shy away to pick whatever you like from this library here. The game's yours after all, and everything explained in this video works with all the other rulers too. Now, after we have started the game, we're gonna get flung on the world, and in the next point, number 2, we're gonna talk about the basics of how your cities and how your empire works. So we're going to go over the mechanical parts here. How do resources work, and how do you expand your city, and all these things first. I try to keep this video as mechanical as possible and not so much about power gaming strategies, so it's more about the how does it work side and not how do I get the most out of that mechanic side. I hope you understand. So here on this end, when you click your city here, you get the oversight about the productions of your city: food, production points, draft, stability, money, mana, knowledge, and Imperium. That's a lot of resources, isn't it? So, quickly explained. Food lets your city grow, so the more food a city produces, the quicker it can acquire land around itself. The hammers produce buildings. That is what it does. The swords produce units. They're basically two different resources for two different production queues that happen at the same time. That's pretty special for this game. Not all 4X games do it like that. City stability, I think, explains itself quite easily. by itself. It is just how happy the people are. Happy people are productive, unhappy people are unproductive. Easy. Gold is what we use to build things and buy units and keep our units also paid with. Mana, spellcasting, and magical creatures need that also as an upkeep. Knowledge, basically all research points. We do unlock new spells and lots of other goodies with that. One of the most important resources in the game. And Imperium is the Empire expansion and development resource. I dedicated an entire point for this. A couple of these we will explain deeper in the video. A couple of these we won't be touching from here on out. So, the production queues. The upper one generates gold if we don't build a new building, but it does offer us all the different buildings that a city can do. These buildings don't have anything to do with the provinces that you pick around here. So, you see those outlined things. This is the terrain that the city can pick up. This terrain generates resources that we invest into buildings and units. The buildings, they don't exist physically anywhere except for the centerpiece here, so don't worry about losing them because they're sitting in any province. There are province improvements, but these are later, much later important. Most of the buildings that we do here sit in the city itself, and we only lose them if we lose the city. Now, as we see here, we need to pay a certain amount of gold and wait a couple of turns until we get this building, and then it unlocks another building. Usually, gold buildings unlock more gold buildings, research buildings unlock more research buildings, and so forth. There's also a town hall, which allows us to annex new and more provinces around the city. So once we have a town hall, we can expand the city further, and we get more gold. We get also new units, and generally, at a town hall tier 3, a city is able to produce all the units a culture can produce. Usually, some cultures are a little bit different than that. And you are also able to build most of the buildings there. When we head on over here to the units, here we can just recruit tier 1s on tier 1 town halls, tier 2 units on tier 2 town halls, tier 3 units on tier 3 town halls. It's quite linear. Right-clicking these gives you an overview about what these guys can do, basically their character sheet, all their stats and such. I'll be going about that in a hot minute. What's important to note, all buildings that you can construct have a boost requirement. If a building is boosted by the condition here, you get it cheaper and faster done. This is something you want to do. The boosts always are related to provinces that a city owns. So, for example, if we claim a province by growing the city accordingly and build a forester or a farm, certain buildings in the list will be cheaper and faster built. It makes sense that a library is faster built when we have a forester. Most of them try to have some sort of a logical thing going on between themselves. Some of them are a little bit more abstract. But in short, basically you want to have as many hammers as possible to get the buildings quickly done, then food to get the city fast grown. Military cities want draft. Gold, every city wants. Mana and knowledge are also resources that are really high in demand. In my opinion, knowledge is one of the highest demand resources. The rest you will explore by yourself. I hope you understand how cities work now. Moving on to number 3, army basics and map movement basics. So let's zoom in, and when you left click your armies here, you get here the overview of the banner. We can left click any unit, and you see here we have them now singularly selected, and when I right click them, I can move them out of the banner. Each banner can only consist 6 units, and my general rule of thumb is try to have a 50-50 distribution between ranged and melee units. It works pretty decently. When you're more experienced, you will notice that this rule of thumb is not necessarily the most efficient one, but congratulations, you now understand the game better than before, and that's exactly what we want. But with a 50-50 distribution, you don't do anything inherently wrong. Now, these are the most basic things how to move your units. Spreading out your units like that allows you to cover more ground and explore more. Keeping them together as a cluster makes them more safe when they get attacked. Up to 3 clusters close to each other can be, by shift left clicking several of them, bundled together in a cluster. This is a relatively new one, so you can move up to 3 units together. It's usually your engagement size. I think the limit is higher. I think we can even move 6 or 9 units, but I haven't tried it out. But generally you want to move 3 banners of 6 units as a full army stack. That is the game's standard, so to speak, because you can never bring more than 3 times 6, total 18 units on the battlefield. Therefore, bringing more doesn't make too much sense. Now, let's read one of these character sheets and learn what these stats mean. HP is pretty simple to understand, but there's one really important caveat. While the hit points go down, your unit will lose visibly people on the battlefield. The lower the battlefield people go, the unit loses percentile their power. So after losing 25 HP, this unit will also only do 50% of its damage anymore. This is true for basically any unit that consists out of several people. If it's only one guy making the unit, like a hero for example, they will fight the same until the last HP of theirs. That's very important. The next thing, the shield and the Ankh are your magical resistance and your physical resistance. I think these go pretty much without further explanations. Just keep in mind every point introduces a percentile reduction, so every point here in this game is quite big. A physical defense of 4 is already pretty steep. After that, we have movement points. Standard for infantry, 32. Then there's another type of units, 40, and cavalry with 48. These are the 3 brackets, so to speak, of speed, and this is basically slow speed, normal speed, fast speed. Or, well, actually 32 is pretty much normal, and it's normal, fast, and very fast. You can't look at that as you might want to. So, morale, high morale, more crits, low morale, low crits, and even the chance to fumble and hurt yourself. There is also an XP bar up here, and the more experience a unit gets, the more bonuses they get. Look at all the shields and HP a unit receives for all the upgrades. This means experience matters a lot in this game. Value your troops, protect your troops. Don't necessarily look at them as something you throw away, and you will get something very, very efficient. A fully leveled out tier 1 troop is very, very powerful. And that's true for all troops. Some troops even evolve into other troops when they are fully leveled out, and they gain a variety of different things. It really is worth checking out what these guys can do. Down here then, we see their active abilities, and here you basically see what defines the unit and what makes them tick. What's the last thing that I want to talk about here? Below the name is also a type of the unit, support unit and shield unit and so on and so forth. These are absolutely defined skill sets, so to speak. A ranged unit is always a guy with a bow that shoots physical projectiles, for example, and this way you can understand the categories. And shield units, for example, have always the shield wall ability, so do have Sun Priests or support units always have the warding ability, and so on and so forth. Study these, it helps you a lot in understanding how your troops work and the enemy troops work. And last but not least, you also have heroes, which have gear that they can equip, and a whole skill bar and level bar. We're not going to go over this in this video, because I trust you to just experiment with that and have fun with it. It is pretty straightforward in my own understanding. Okay, now we know how to move an army over the map, how to understand how units work. There's one thing that I should talk about: tiers. The game has 5 tiers. Tier 1 units are the lowest tier, and obviously tier 5s are the highest tier. This allows you also to give you a impression about roughly how strong an enemy stack is. A stack of 4 tier 5 units is not the same as a stack of 4 tier 1 units, obviously. These Roman numbers here will give you a bit of a guideline about the general power of these, and also every unit after tier 4 and higher is especially costly, because it costs you also Imperium on top of that. More about that later. Now, We now know the basics about map movement and army movement. We're going to talk about battle in a hot minute, but now I want to give you a quick introduction into the research topic. So I already said that knowledge is an important resource. When we select our research, we always get to select from 3 different spells, and these are drawn from our tomes and our culture. Our culture has also always a assortment of basic spells, and there's also a assortment of generic spells that everybody gets to study, enhancements for scouts, such. Now, tomes. Tomes always include up to 6 different things that we can research. Here, for example, it's active spells in battle, unit enchantments that cost us constantly mana but enhance our troops, units we can summon, units we can recruit also in cities. Tomes are very, very versatile. Once we have researched a couple of things in this tome, we get to unlock the next one. There's also up here elemental affinities. Every tome we unlock includes affinity points. This is a relatively complex system, and I will only skim it here in this video for the most important thing. For one, your affinities do give you different skills on the Imperium board. We're going to talk about that in a hot minute. And they unlock tomes of higher quality. So, here goes the order. After the first tier 1 tome comes another tier 1 tome, and then we go for a tier 2 tome or lower. You always get to choose lower if you want to. So after we've chosen the tier 2 tome, get to choose another one once we have researched enough, and then we unlock the tier 3s. 2 tier 3s later, we unlock in a grand we are unlocking 2 tier 3s again, and then we get access to the tier 4s and so on and so forth. It's a very linear system. But the interesting thing is, at tier 3 and henceforth, we need to have a certain amount of affinity of the specific element to are allowed to study these. Everything up to tier 2 can be studied regardless of your affinities. So even if you are a super holy and righteous empire, you can go down here and pick up the tome of necromancy and start necromancing. But you won't be able to pick up the tier 3 tome even if you are already on the order side, heavy invested enough to have this affinity. You will not be able to pick up the tier 3 Shadow Tome unless you have already enough Shadow affinity unlocked elsewhere. You get affinity points by tomes and by cultural traits, which you select only once at the beginning of the game. So all in all, elemental affinities are a very scarce resource and very much define your build. Therefore, research also defines which direction you can take. I know, this is all a little bit complicated at the beginning, but it all flashes down to something like this. Here we started with the Tome of Roots, which is a nature tome. We have already, because we are a high culture, we have a investment into order. We get 2 points of order affinity because of that. Every culture gets different affinities. And now we have already the bias that we can say our build could be only yellow and green tomes. And that would work. I strongly recommend to just orient after what you can unlock, and once you are more confident in knowing what these different books do, you will start to specifically unlock things that you want and start defining builds. I just want to give you the understanding how the mechanics work, because to get the highest level tome of a elemental affinity, you need at least 8 points, and I highly recommend to get there because these might contain a very low amount of spells, but they're really fun. Okay, enough about research. Let's hop on over to number 5, battle basics. So when we move a troop stack on an enemy troop stack, battle begins. We see here the enemy's troops and ours in comparison, and a power-related comparison, which then says if the battle is safe or not. Don't give too much about that, because if you manually battle well, you can really beat the odds massively. There is always auto combat, and if we allow the AI to use spells, auto combat is even better. And when you press that, you see here that we totally obliterated the enemy. That was no big surprise. It's been very, very simple enemies after all. Auto-resolve can always be rewound by retrying. So there is really no loss at trying to auto-resolve a battle quickly, and then if the outcome is not to your liking, just play it yourself. So we're going to go here into the retry button, and I want to introduce to you the very basics about the combat grid. There's an entire video about that because it's a relatively complex topic, but I want to give you the very, very basics here. So with the WASD, we can move the camera. We left-click a unit, and we can move them on this hex grid here. Right-clicking moves them towards there, and then we can give them their final orders. Every unit in this game has 3 actions per turn. Going into defense mode ends your turn. Attacking ends your turn. You can also just rotate your unit to make sure that you're facing on the right side, because the game works with flanking. So if we get behind our enemy, we are allowed to flank them, deal more damage, and they don't get to retaliate. If we're in the front of theirs, they get to retaliate, and they also suffer the normal amount of damage because their full defense applies. Shield units just can be put to your units and put into a shielding stance. And here you see now, around them, this aura is now working that protects our entire stack. Every culture has their own specialties. The High culture has a mechanic called Awakening, which inherently powers up the units if they are awakened. And yeah, there's something for every different culture. So I went forward 1 turn to move the enemy forward. If you click the enemy, you see what they can do, which of your units they can reach. You can also see their character sheet by left-clicking the enemy's portrait here. And generally speaking, there's 2 modes of attack in this game. There's multi-attackers, which look like that, which means for every action point remaining in their turn, they get to attack another time. So the more action points they have, the harder they strike. And then there's single action attackers, which just always use only one action to fulfill their attack. These are, generally speaking, either supporters or mobile attackers that benefit from the fact that they get to use their entire movement to get into the face of the enemy and then whack. All in all, this is the basics about how combat works. There's much more to it, obviously, but I don't want to go too deep here into that. Right-clicking an enemy while in the vicinity of a ranged unit attacks them like that, and the percentile numbers show you how likely the hit is. What's important to note, bows have a misfire chance. If the chance isn't 100% and there is a friendly unit in between, they might hit your friendly units. Try to keep your units alive, try to use all the abilities. I don't have the time in this video to go through all that. If you want to know more about combat, check out combat tutorials, because the topic is too deep to go more and deeper like that. I just wanted to give you a general understanding about the controls here. Now, moving on to number 6, Imperium and Expansion. Alright, I moved the game forward 3 turns off camera to unlock the skill tree here. Imperium is a resource that we generate each and every turn, but we do get only out of certain special sources and income of that. We build new cities with Imperium by moving a hero on a free and empty province, which shouldn't be inherited by a free city dude here like that. And then we just move the hero on top of that province, and you click the Build Outpost button. I won't be doing that to not piss off our neighbors, but that is all that there is to it. The outpost will be built in 3 turns, and after that you need to invest 200 Imperium into that outpost to transform that into a city again. That city then will work exactly the same as your starting city. You want to scout around your starting location to find a location that either has a wonder and or a magic material. These are the most desirable resources that you want to go for, and cities are limited. The regular limit is 3 cities. To expand that, you will need this screen here, which I will quickly explain. The Imperium screen is divided into different affinities, and for each of the affinities that we get, we can scale down these lines. We unlock 3 points each turn because we have 3 affinity. The more affinity we get, the faster we are allowed to pick up these skills. Since we don't have the other affinities, these other trees are locked for us. There is also a general tree, which is available for everybody. Every affinity here plays out differently. The common denominator here is, though, that we can expand our city cap down here by this skill, and there's also a resource that I haven't mentioned yet called Whispering Stones. These are basically diplomats, used to be put into free cities. Free cities, if they are supported by a Whispering Stone, will eventually become your vassals, and you also have the option to transform them into your own cities by investing Imperium. That is one thing you can do. You can also conquer them, or whatever you want to do. At the end of the day, you expand with Imperium, and you also buy Empire skills with the same resource. So it is a constant question whether you want to specialize your Empire further, or you want to expand it further with these skills. This is basically the inbuilt dilemma of this resource, and you always have to balance around that. And now to number 7, the last point, how to win. Victory in this game is different for each run. You can go for different victory conditions. Either kill everybody, obviously. You can also win by having a certain amount of expansion running. So if your empire is basically big enough and you have built a couple of buildings that are unlocked further down the road, you can win this way, or you conquer a certain amount of golden ancient wonders. That's the most difficult and vicious ones to take. You cast a spell there, you defend them for a period of time, victory. Or after 150 turns, the game automatically ends and the player with the highest score wins. You can configure the victory conditions when you are creating a game. These are just the default settings. Usually, I must say, from my experience, one of the most accessible things is the magic victory, because finding 2 gold wonders here on this world, for example, and getting there is a achievable and meaningful goal, but your mileage may vary. And that's that. Now you know how this game works in a nutshell. There's obviously more I haven't mentioned here, how the world map spell menu works and a lot of other things, but I didn't want to bloat the game too much. What I want to say as the last point here, take a look into all the menus after you have understood how the game works and play around with these. There's a couple of mechanics that I haven't talked about in this video. The Rally of Legions, which allows you to hire units from free cities, crafting of artifacts, the Mage Tower, lots of things. But I think with the given knowledge, you should be able to acquire all these bits step by step, and I hope you can enjoy this wonderful game, which allows you to just roleplay whatever you want and have fun with it. I hope this video was helpful for you. Add in whatever you think I might have forgotten for other beginners, or chime in with your wisdom what has helped you when you started out. My goal is that this comment section is filled with talk, discussion, and knowledge for people that are new to the game to enjoy it more, and go crazy, guys. Leave a like, leave a subscribe. Consider supporting me financially via Ko-fi or any other given means in the description box below. Many thanks go out to all the supporters of the channel, and of course, a big thanks for watching this video up until the very end. I hope it was insightful for you, and see you all next time.